yeah, I'll just, Bill Redmond, everyone, and he, like I mentioned, was our guest 3 or 4 years ago. Bill's got a pretty impressive resume. Vietnam helicopter crew chief for I think a year and a half, was it? It was a little over a year? Just a year. Grew up, started in Black Earth. Were you born in Black Earth, or did you? Black Earth. Yep, Black Earth. Now lives in Verona and has this interesting, fascinating hobby. And I think afterwards we'll come up and see him up close. And while he's talking, hopefully I won't be distracting, but I've got a little camera. I'm going to try to go and zoom in on the thing he's talking about so that he doesn't have to hold it up. But yeah, everyone, Bill Redmond.
Got to get used to this. Can you hear okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bill Redmond. I'm from 30 years in Verona. And my ancestors in the late 1800s came and settled in Riley. And my dad and his family went to the white school. He was baptized over in the Lutheran church over here before my grandma moved to Black Earth with her sister after my grandfather died at 33 and of TB. And his 2 brothers and 1 sister also died of TB, so it was most of them never made it till about 30 years old was all. Tough time anyway. But and the farms are still in the Redmond family, and my dad ran the farm from 1943. It's still out there. He isn't anymore, unfortunately, but although he'd be over 100, so he probably wouldn't like that. But anyway, I got a 1901 horse barn that I bought in 1977 for Becky over there and her sister, and they wouldn't let me sell it back in 2012. So I started to build things to go along with it. There was a team of horses with it and a sleigh, some fencing, and a bull and a cow, I guess it was in. And so I'm paying them back by having 40, 50 more things that they're going to have to figure out what to do with. But today I was going to set the talk about farming with horses in 1901, 1905. And a little before my time, because my dad in 1943 bought a tractor and wasn't into horses, so he got pretty modern pretty fast out there. And but it still was kind of fascinating how much work it takes on horses anyway. And I was going to start over. I got about 5 different things to talk about. Where it's, I'm going to be talking about setting up the land in the spring for, and then plowing and disking and then planting and at the end harvesting and the like. And they're already on this table. You see, this works pretty good that way, but I guess. Anyway, I'll start over with. On the right side, and we'll work to the left here. And if anybody wonders, these are drawer liners. And these are, Becky made all the artwork on the top of it, so it looks like a 1901 road with ruts and grass and all that stuff. Anyway, but back in the 1800s and early 1900s, you had to fertilize. And of course, if you're fertilizing, you're doing it with manure from the cows and the horses and the like. So, okay. All right, and I got a couple examples here of manure spreaders. And this one here is like this. They're all kind of the same. They have large wheels in the back so they can turn the flail type, well, not flail type, but and then the beaters. And for instance, you pull the lever here and it sets up the beaters, the wheels will turn the beaters and it'll throw the manure out the back, and then you pull the other lever and it adjusts the belt, conveyor belt that moves towards the rear, towards the beaters. And once it's empty, there you are. I don't know if anybody knows which direction you should go with the manure spreader. Whether you should go into the wind or with the wind. Well, you go into the wind. You want the wind in your face rather than the other alternative. Anyway, and once the fertilizer or manure is in place, the next thing that comes down is plowing. Well, the fertilizer lots of times is a big manure pile on back of the barn, and because most of the time you couldn't get out in the winter to put it out in the fields, you start pulling the manure spreader and the wheels, all of a sudden they'll start sliding right along, so you might as well put it on pile. So in the spring you had one of the jobs you had to do, or delegate it to one or two or three of the kids, and fill her up and take it out, spread it over the South 40. And in the 1800s, 1900s, they used drop plows or single plows that they pulled behind the horses. I got one that's a metal one there, and the one behind it I made. It's got a double plow type thing, and the plows all work kind of the same. It cuts into the dirt, and then you got a moldboard in the back, which kind of is angled, so as the dirt comes up, it kind of turns and it'll fall down rather than just going over and you have to plow that pile up besides the new one, and I like that too. And you want to get into the disking and dragging after your plowing is done, and in some cases disking before you plow, even just to break up so it's a little easier to get at it, but for the most part it's used afterwards. And the disc here I made small because they're hard to pull, and if you have a team of horses on it, you might need more than one team to pull the darn thing. And you adjust it so it's like a V shape, and so it becomes almost like a plow. And these discs are really cutting in when you got the two angled, and it helps cut up the plowed soil. The drag in the back now, you either drag it all by itself or you pull it behind the disc if you got husky horses. And most of the time when you take it around, first you have the pins, or actually they're like railroad ties that are all across the about a 3x3 inch wood board, and you can adjust them so they stand straight up and they'll plow into or disc in, drag right into it, and break up those clods. And as they're broke up, and you can lower it down and drag it around, and it becomes a drag. It makes the clump smaller, so it makes it a little bit easier. And we also got a plow on the other side of the tree there, and here's has a 3-horse hitch on it, and just a single plow. It has a blade that cuts the dirt and helps when your plowshare cuts into the dirt anyway. And it's a lot easier, you can ride along with it. And you adjust it, actually that one even works too, you know, it's, because it's a metal one that I got anyway. And then after you're dragged and everything is nice and ready to go, you gotta get your grain drill out and drill in the seeds for grain, which would be up in front there. Had a whole bunch of hoppers, and the whole thing is supposed to come back here anyway. And the seeds are inside there, and they drop down. And usually I got a seat on the top of it, but most of the time the farmer stood in the back of the grain drill. And for the most part, if you were smart, you'd get it out, walk behind, and you watch each one to make sure they're dropping their seeds. And if you see one or two that isn't, then you can stop your horses, whoa, get out there and try to figure out what is causing the clog up. And otherwise, you'd wind up with part of your field, and that happens today even with modern equipment. You have to keep things clean and the like. And over here on its right is a corn planter, and this has got I don't have a rod that drops down and it digs into the dirt as it goes along. And so when you turn around and come back, you follow that line back and it drops another one. You know, it's 1901 GPS, I guess. That's the forerunner, I suppose. But because nowadays they can go back 3 or 4 days later and plant exactly where they left off, even if it rained. Up here, it's you've got bins that hold the corn seed, and a little plow in the front of each one that drops the corn. And the wheels on the back are shaped, well, they're shaped towards the center, so as you're going along, it has a tendency to kind of squeeze the dirt row in on top of each other and puts them in the soil at somewhat the right depth anyway. This one's all set up for checking also. On the back part there's wire checker, and the checker has a little knob on the wire, so many inches apart, and it will drop the seed. And then as it keeps on going, when it hits the next notch, it drops the seed. And you can do, what they do is checkering, it's called, and you can actually cultivate any direction. You can, left, right, or even crossways. But the amount of corn plants that you have is pretty limited then in comparison to right now. They plant within 8-10 inches of each other, and it's in one line or multiple lines, or 30 or 40 of these big things drop the seeds anyway. And then you need to get in after the corn starts coming up, or the grain starts coming up. The corn especially needs to be cultivated, and there's an old-fashioned cultivator here that you walk behind like a walking plow is, and it's just got sharpened sticks almost like underneath the drops, which will cut in and hopefully cut those grasses in between the rows up. And a more modern one, where you're riding in, right on that one, you drop the tines down, and it pulls up like it's plowing, only it's plowing the weeds in between. Lots of going back and forth all the time, and so a lot of hours on your horses as the summer goes by. And then after you're done with that, then you start getting into harvesting. And if you're in the corn, out in front of this is the corn binder, and the corn binder has a big wheel in the center that runs it. And as you can see there, well, there's always accidents on the farm, you know. Anyway, this one happens to be a real old one, back in the 1800s, because when the corn comes out, you need to make corn stalks, and so if you've seen, everybody probably has seen corn stalks and grain shocks around, especially if you're in the Amish area. Nobody modern does that, doesn't anymore, but it helps drying, and so it sits there drying before the thrashing machine crew comes. And the same way with the grain over here. This one here is harvesting the grain as it's standing up, and the paddles go around this way as you're pulling along, and it bends the grain over, and it drops in the bed, and the bed is moving and moves this way towards the center, which has a belt in there that's running down from the top and then goes back up underneath, and there's another one inside that's running the same way, so it'll come out, pop out on the end, so the guys has to stand in the back and tie each bundle. And I think somewhere on there is, yeah, this over here, if you can look closer, you can see over to the right a little farther. That's the string, anyway. And as it went along, it was labor intensive. Somebody came up with the great idea of tying. Had automatic tires on the grain binder and the corn binder, so you didn't have to, and it would just pitch them out on the side. And then somebody who's walking along, instead of tying the things, he's setting up the shocks of grain or the shocks of corn. And it makes it really look kind of neat around Halloween time when all the shocks are out there. And then harvesting for those afterwards is done with the thrashing machine. Thrashing machine shakes up, for instance, like the oats, and shakes it up, drops the oats inside, and then the corn stalks are then blown up a pipe, and you can set the pipe up in the bowl right at a window in your barn or the doorway, wherever you want to. It was a telescopic type of thing, and down in the end of the machine had a sacker where you sacked up the grain, and usually stored it in upstairs in the grain bin in the barn. Most people had grain bins up in the barn, or they had them in the horse barn. Now you notice in the horse barn over here it doesn't have gutters, it's just a horse barn. And gutters came along with cows and being inside and everything. The horses were outside most of the time. Didn't spend a lot of time in there because they were working. Anyway, but so I'd like to make a thrashing machine, but with all the stuff I got, it would be about that long from one finger to the next, and would stand fairly high, and I would want a steam tractor with it. That's a pretty good size, but a lot bigger than the tractor I got over there, which is more of a modern tractor. And my grandfather in Plain, Wisconsin, he had a couple of thrashing machines and several steam tractors, because right in the middle of Plain was his sawmill. And in the fall, he would send his tractors and his harvest out to the different farmers, and they would pay him for using it. And most of us, like in the Black Earth area, you got Elma Thorson, he owned one, and so he would go from farm to farm with equipment, and then the farmers all over would come in, including the ladies, with pies and sandwiches and things like that for the noon lunch. And all the guys would bring a team of horses with a wagon along and to feed this monster thrashing machine. And then when they were done, they usually had a keg of beer out there to celebrate a little bit. You didn't do it every day. You could see why. Anyway, but hard enough staying on a horse. Well, anyway, but that was a real a friendly type of a group of all the farmers getting together like that. And then they go to the next farm and keep repeating it. And I don't remember much about that. I'm 77, and I can remember a little bit about thrashing a couple of times and kind of know how it would do. But for the most part, me and my little brother, who was probably about 4 and I was 6, and Elmer was a big jokester, and he'd take pennies and stick them in the dirt. Just got a kick out of watching the 2 Redmond boys digging in the dirt for pennies, you know. Once in a while he'd throw a nickel in there, and we thought we really, well, penny or a nickel was worth a lot back in, 1947, 48. And one day he had $1 laying on the ground, and we all kind of ran to it, and so did all the other workers went running towards it too. And Elmer was sitting on the tractor, and he says, I want the kids to have this. So he started the tractor up, moved it over, right over the top of the dollar bill, and nobody got it except him when he finally backed it up at the end of the day. Well, it was kind of a funny story to tell anyway. But, we can get into haying, which is usually haying can be 1 crop, 2 crops, 3 crops. All depends on how much it comes up. First crop is always the tallest, and the next one is a little less, and first one is a little bit more stemmy, and the rest of them are a little more leafy, which are really good for feeding. And you need to cut that stuff, with a mower. And horse-drawn mower here anyway. And it does a really good job anyway. Well, it doesn't have anything to drive anyway. But if you, on the end of here, I can put it up. That's a real dangerous thing to do, because as you put it up to hook it so you can drive down the road with it, the blades still go up and down, and the little mold board on the end here helps keep the grass towards the hay that's cut, rather than being flung out into the hay that hasn't been cut. moving on from there is you need to rake up the hay. The front one up there is a dump rake, which is one of the older ones, and they're kind of the ones that you see around. Nobody seems to want to get rid of them. They use them like they use grain planters in the front yard for flowers and things like that, pretty big. And dump rake actually dropped, pulled the lever, dropped the tines down on the ground, and it went along the edge of the ground and it bunched up the hay. And then when you got so much hay bunched up, the driver would reach the lever, pull it up, and as it shows there, the tines are lifted up. The hay stays in kind of a bunch, sort of a dotted line as you look down the field anyway. And over on the right is a side rake, and that as you're going down raking, it does a continual row of hay. And that's the ones that I always used, and they still got the same one out there. Oh, probably not. That was all metal and like that too. And of course, if you're going to harvest the hay now, you need to harvest it with the early one with that got a hay loader that loads the hay on the wagon. Now the wagon the wagon sits in front and will drive over with the horses over the top of either the dumped hay or the raked hay, and the beaters down on the bottom are going around and they force the hay up into these rods above that have pins in them, and the rods keep cycling up and down and sort of like it's going around in a circle. And as it moves up, it drops it off on the end and into the wagon. And it's kind of cool. You even got a opening on the end. When you're first doing it, the hay is low, and when it gets higher, they close up that little door on the end. And if you come down towards the bottom, right here, you'll see the gearing is an up and down type of thing. So it gives this kind of a motion as it's going around, or this kind of motion, and which is what moves the hay up on the top. We had one of these sitting around for 30, 40 years until finally it needed the room, I guess. And we wound up getting rid of it. Some of them were made out of wood. A lot of them, like the New Idea ones, were all metal. Okay, I could use a drink too. Anyway, but excuse me. Caffeine, geez. Which is the loader is just sort of a fascinating thing to me. It was one of the first things I actually built, and because I think it was important part of harvesting. And I grew up with the baler. This baler here is a New Holland 66. It has a Wisconsin engine on it, and which operated the plunger and the what draws the hay up into the move this over. Yeah, it's the hay going up in there. Now the bales are compacted and pushed towards the back. You can actually drop that the back part down where the bale is coming out, and you got a wagon that's hooked onto there, and so you get somebody standing on the wagon and stacks them I got a wagon here that's stacked. So you got a pretty good size load of hay when you're going back. Now these, the New Holland 66 made a rectangular bale, not like the rectangular bales that they have nowadays that weigh a lot. I mean, where you could actually lift them, unless you got a little bit on the green side, where they'd you wouldn't want to put them in the barn anyway. So most of the time, the green grass would be next to the fence line, and everybody had to have fences in them days because the corn or the cows were put out outside, and horses probably outside also. And the baler over there is would be a 1952, 3, something like that. And in front of it is a come along, or a four cart. The horses are hooked up to the 4-cart, and the 4-cart hooks up to a modern pieces of equipment with the hitch in the back. And I saw one a couple of years ago that had 3 horses up front pulling it. I mean, 3, maybe there was 4, I don't know. And in some cases, the 4-cart wheels actually power takeoff in the center of it. So you could actually run power takeoff equipment, and with that, and still only have horsepower in front of it. But the wheels would dig in, and like how the manure spreader wheels work to run the beaters and the apron, they would, so they didn't need to have a tractor on the front of it. Of course, the ones we're talking about today are Amish, and they apparently have to stay with the horses. And, but so they have the best of both worlds there. We always had on the 66, my brother and I, my dad, we do custom baling. And when we got our stuff in Black Earth done, we'd go to neighbors or who didn't maybe have a baler at that time. And Dad charged so much a bale, I think it was, I don't know how he did that, into the financial aspect of it. And some farmers wanted to pick their own up, so that we just go along with the baler, dumping them right on the ground, and then their family would come out with a wagon and pitch it on the wagon. But if you want to pay just a little bit more, you can have the wagon behind the baler and load them up. And if you have a couple, 3 wagons, and fill them up and put them in the barn and pay Dad, I guess. So anyway, but when I grew up, I didn't have running water in the house, and I had to, even at like 4 years old, I had to carry water, and my pail was a lot smaller than Dad's was. But and I asked Dad one day, and I says, "How come the cows have got drinking cups in the barn all through the barn?" He says, "Well, the cows pay for all this stuff." And I said, "Yeah, we don't have water in the house, you know." And actually, I think probably it wasn't long after that we got a tub and tore apart the summer kitchen, and or the kitchen anyway, or pantry is what it was, and put running water in. I was kind of tickled about that, but he still had to carry the damn wood fill up the wood box and like that too. So that kind of takes you all the way through preparing and planting and harvesting and the like. Well, I was talking about bales getting a little green because they were usually wherever the outside along the fences, They might be a little more greener, so we usually left them out because you can get spontaneous combustion on a hay bale like that that's packed in there. And sometimes we would actually just take your hand, bale here, and just stick it down in there and see how it feels. And if it wasn't that hot, probably okay to put it in the barn. My dad, one time we had a fire in the barn, and we didn't know it, but it burnt a big hole inside the bales, and then because apparently the oxygen wasn't enough in there to keep the fire going, it just died, so it was all kind of a black hole. I don't know, I suppose it was probably about as big as this table in a circle. So that was close. I think that's about it for our talk, and do some questions here if anybody's got any.
I was really curious, this was the first one you made here? Or was it this one?
That was the first one.
Could you walk us through just how you make this? Like,
Yeah, oh, sure.
Start with the wheels, like how many hours did this take, this one piece here?
Well, that one piece, you had to kind of figure out how it was going to look. I do a lot of research to see what these things look like, how they were used, and in some cases it's one of the most interesting things. You find out a lot when you research stuff in a lot of history books and the like. But this one here, I finally found wheels, these metal wheels that are on the side here, and these, a manufacturer that had metal wheels, and so he had them from 1/2 inch to 4 inches, and so I never had a problem whenever making, if I needed a 3-inch wheel or 2.5 or 2, you know what I mean, and they're all kind of the same, so everything looked the same. They even looked like the dump rig there, the yellow wheels, if you're, I think, anyway, I've even got, like, the side rig's got small wheels in the back, keeps the rig from going all the way down and hitting the ground. It's supposed to just stay just on the edge to pick up your hay anyway. But ours, I don't know, 10, 12 hours maybe, or something like that. All my wood is cut off of a block, say a 5/8 inch stick of wood, 4 inches wide by 4 feet long, and I used to have to cut it by hand, and now Becky's husband has a knife making business, and so he's got all these nice pieces of equipment, and so I can just take that over there, and he just cuts me off 1/8 of an inch 50 times or something. Then if I know what the length is going to be, then I'll even have him cut it to say all my fencing is 9 inches. The wood in between the two. And so it's kind of easy. When I need extra ones, I had them cut up a bunch before I leave, rather than me cutting it up itself. But we go on from the. So everything is pretty well made of regular cut oak. And the barn that I bought from a guy who made it on Monroe Street and next to the Laurel Tavern there. He was a farrier who shoot horses for a living in Waunakee. And he had this little business on the side, and the thing was sitting on a wooden stump, and it just jumped out at me. I just said, I got to get that for the kids to play with. Actually, I got it for me to play with, right? And she was only 5. And so I got my Norwegian flag on the back here, and I've added some things to it. And we've already looked at running the hay up. And the nice thing about this barn is I found that it's got 2 tiers. And so I could put baled hay all on one loft and the loose hay on the top loft. And it gave it a little bit more fun to do. And the front was open, and so most of I got 11 buildings, including that one, and they all have open roofs. So I can just take it off and everybody can see inside now. Most of them, if it's too far away from people that are walking around and to be able to see in, I just leave them on. But, it's been fun researching. This is a logging wheel. I'm not used to logging. I'm used to cutting fence posts and cutting cordwood for the stove and the like in those days anyway. And this would, I don't know, we got a little, this is, they're like 9-10 feet tall. These wheels are, and you'll lift up the front and hook onto the log and then drop it back down and it lifts the log up. Try to do this slow for you. And that was used in the spring. Usually the loggers logged in the wintertime and they used a sled, and because they had the snow. But when you start getting slushy, mushy stuff, then the big wheels came in handy. And you could haul a 100-foot log with that, and maybe 2 teams of horses in the front pulling it. And that's about it for that anyway. So I had my trees, which Becky made for me, and she's quite good at that stuff anyway. But then we go over on the far right, you can see I was over in Wanakee and the railroad guys were there, and there was one guy walked by with one, looked like 1/16th scale railroad, and it was about 5 feet tall section. And so can I borrow that? And I laid it alongside of the road here, and it just looked magnificent. And I didn't have anything to put on it, and I says, that's a waste of space, even though it looks good and the like. So I actually I figured there was always 4 corners on the tables that I was using, so I cut a section that would fit in the corner, and for I don't know, 4 or 5 years it just sat in the corner there, and I used the same scale that they had, because I happen to have one that I made for a helicopter I was building, and so I spread the ties out, and so it looks a little bit more to scale. It actually should be a little bit wider than that anyway, but I got a little artist discretion, and you can, that's what I call it anyway. If I was making a miniature, I'd still be making the first one, trying to, some of these people do beautiful work with wood and the like, and they make these amazing pieces of and the like. And lately, I had the roads set up here that Becky made, and it was all farming type stuff. I set it up for, well, here's the Patrons Mercantile and Black Earth, and there's several other ones we have here, and they would deliver fuel oil, gas, and what was the other one? Kerosene. in there, and some of them were 2 tanks, some of them were 3, and in the back here, they all had a little box on the back, and that had axle grease, which is a big hay, and see you come in there, and oils and that type of stuff that they would sell to the farmers, and the like. I didn't quite know what else to make, and Becky says, "How about a beer wagon?" Okay, you know. So I made the beer wagon here, and each one of them I lettered a brewery across Wisconsin that started in about 1855, right around the Civil, maybe a little bit even before the Civil War, and they're still being used today. And I had other ones that I could make. Every town had a brewery, even Black Earth did, Cross Plains did, and I suppose Verona did too. But like they all had cheese factories and that type of stuff too. So, and I thought maybe the farmers would like to get out and do some fishing. My dad always did. But it was usually a cane pole, and he walked down to the Black Earth Creek, and he was down there for an hour and a half, and then come back, because this guy here is gets out in the water with the boat, anyway, and so it was kind of fun making that thing.
Bill, can I ask the kids, don't tell them, can I ask the kids if they know what this is? It's not a planetarium, I know it's got the moon on there. Anyone under 12?
Get some hands up.
Was it? Yeah, Liam, what is this? Oh, okay. Just curious. You ever seen one of these in real life?
Yes.
Where?
Yes, you know the answer to that. Isn't it that one house? I remember you showed one to me before.
The little farmhouse on PD.
The other place where you went to
Anne has one.
school.
Sorry to interrupt, though. I just
I don't
wanted
know.
to say it.
We bought wood from someone, and they had an outhouse there. So that's the only place I remember.
Was the plumbing working when you used it?
I don't know.
But I mean, gravity.
Yeah. One of the first things I asked when I went over to the white school when they were cleaning up, where's the outhouse? And one lady that was there, she knew it's in the back of it, up in the woods where it was, and
That was you, Linda, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
probably, and
Wait, okay, I gotta see. I wanna see how real this is. Is the door open?
yep.
Should I knock first? Maybe I should knock.
Good idea.
It hasn't been open for a little while, I gotta pick it open. There.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I think it's a 2-holer, but this is one of the first things I made. I didn't even have the little people for the correct height, so now my little people have to scrunch a little bit to get in there. And like the half moon, I don't know what that's for other than ventilation. I know it's for that. But we had one, of course, on the farm. Everybody else did, and in the 50s, and we did have it tipped over on Halloween. And I did have to, my dad and I had to move it. And I finally figured out why the outhouse was so far away from the house. And actually the sidewalk was way short of the, once I dug a hole next to it, covered up the other one, put the house on top, I knew why I was getting farther away. So it never gets closer. It was a standard convenience back in the 18.
Did it have a Sears Roebuck catalog in it?
Montgomery Ward, I think it was. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. They were kind of harsh, I thought. Next over here, I finally figured out that I can maybe put things on the road that are not have anything to do with farming. And so I thought, well, we got Circus World Museum, and So I figured they always came from Baraboo into Madison and on the train usually. But I thought, well, maybe they'd be coming down the road on KP. Because 1934 is when Highway 14 went through Black Earth. Other than that, it was still south on KP where our home farm is. So I figured that's the road they'd have to come through on. And when I was in Black Earth, down on the end there, the police officer who takes care of Black Earth came in and he said, well, where's the police car? You know, and I thought about that. Well, I researched 1901, 1905 to see what I could come up with. The best I had was a jail wagon. Police in the cities were moved in wagons, not always jail wagons. They moved them in wagons to go on their beats, walking the town. Then they come back with the wagon and pick them up. And sometimes it was a half of a jail wagon, you know, as I wasn't supposed to cops wanted to sit in there behind bars. But so I got her something that she can look at. Right by your thumb there is a horse-drawn, oh, he's still on there. I got ball and chain on there and a little lock and stuff. I'm always running around looking at things, like go to jewelry store and they got these little heart-shaped locks about that big, and I thought, oh, that'll fit on the barn. And, I had a little fun with the Surrey. I got a Surrey here and then the one down on the end. It's even got a horse bag between the Surrey and the anyway, you know, so his tail is protected.
Oh, is that what that's for?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it's a little bit more of a fancier one than this one. But I've had this one over here for many years, and I thought I might as well build something myself. And behind him, on the front row, there's just a just a heavy-duty wagon. And in this one is down at the Historical Society in Black Earth, they gave me a dump wagon. And I redid it. I didn't bring it along. But I thought, well, geez, I want to make a horse-drawn dump wagon. And where it actually works. The metal, I probably won't do it, but metal here, flip forward and it dumps. And it looks like gold in there, and I figured we might as well have precious stones in there rather than just plain old rocks. And but most of the time when I have stones and rocks and things like that around, I stop out at my brother's and pick them up so I can say they're from Black Earth, you know, rather than going out to Verona, even though that's where we started from, Riley. But it was kind of fun, and then inside the fence there is it looks like a treadmill, and it is a treadmill. And on this side, but you can't see it very well, is a wheel that goes around, and you hook it on with a belt to whatever that you want to run, and the horse and they still have them around today. I was surprised that you go to fairs and stuff, they still have ones that horses are on, or cows, dogs, small ones. It was kind of fun making that too. In the background, you can see that one of my little, I probably got 110 of those little things like that made that's kind of support the larger items, you know, weight scales, and you know, here's a little railroad, you know, which you pick up when you go to railroad your luggage and stuff like that. But oh, this came with the barn originally. There was 2 of them. I think Becky wore out that one, the other one, so. And they're just a jumping rail, and the like, but I finally decided, after several years of doing this, that what kind of people I wanted. I even tried artists, stick, if you've ever seen these artist little one, it didn't look very good at all. So I figured I'll go all the way and get as nice a one as I can, because they really, it's just a little support type thing. Anyway, then too, so. I had the guy, this is 1901, and that's what he called it, 1901 barn, and on the back side is a metal plate, and I had him sign his name on it, and I had it engraved at Goodman's, I think, and so I always knew where, you know, when he did that, anyway, which is kind of fun. I don't know if you guys are probably need to go restrooms, all that stuff, or you see anybody see something that you want to talk about? Beck?
Yeah. I think it's cool that you use like everyday items to make your toys. So like the silo, isn't that old?
Becky, here you go.
You're the Becky we keep hearing about?
Yeah.
We need to hear your side of the story.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Becky. Yeah, so some of the things that he makes, and like the silo is an old oatmeal container, you know, isn't that right?
Yes.
It's like, so he glued the wood over the top of an oatmeal container,
Yeah.
which I thought was really cool. And then the mercantile thing,
Oh, sure, this one, the gas,
yeah, that one was a railing from your parents' house, I think.
yeah.
So you just cut it up and,
I needed a round, large, with a flat bottom, and geez, I had railing down in the basement that I took off from my folks when I sold the
Yeah.
house. I didn't think the new people needed, so I had taken it off and saved it.
yeah, so.
It must be a hoarder or something like that.
And then what are the grains? You have little pieces of grain, and it's like, I don't know, like,
Oh, that might be in,
These guys over here?
oh.
Yeah, what
over
is
there.
that?
That's, I think that's mustard seed,
that's mustard
you
seed.
know,
Yeah.
from Miller's.
Yeah.
I've been here 30 years, so I get a lot of stuff down there.
Bill, what exactly, this isn't real, is it?
Yeah.
Genuine simulated poop. It's,
I was afraid to touch it
yeah.
before, I wasn't
It
sure.
wa- It was, I don't know what it's made, it's been so long since I made those little piles. It's just glued together type of material. And it looks kind of okay.
I also wanted to say that, Dad, you've been doing this for many years, like having these displays all over the place. And like, I know that you, year after year, that you have this display over at the Black Earth Museum, right? Yeah.
5 years.
For 5 years now? Yeah.
Not anymore.
Well, okay. But the STEAM show you had that years back. You had it at the STEAM show, and what are some of the other places that you've had it at?
I usually do the toy show. One of the one I missed the most is Verona. Verona High School decided that the lady that was in, maybe I shouldn't say this, the lady that was in charge didn't want to come in on Saturdays or Sundays for the weekend, and so she just canceled the whole thing. And I don't know how they make up the $1,500 they used to make off of it, but
But you won like Best of Show there once, right?
oh yeah, I went up at, I've been up Marksville, no, not Marksville. I remember what it was, but I really like to go to some of the national shows were in Dubuque and get down there and put up the show there too, so.
Becky, do you remember playing with this? What are your thoughts about that?
Oh yeah, I used to play with it. I liked animals. I liked pretend I was an animal a lot. I like crawl on my hands and knees and stuff and pretend I was an animal. So when I had little toys, then I could like pretend that I liked I like to put the like reins and the stuff on the horse and like tie it up to the wagon and have it pull things and I like the bull too. He's got like metal horns, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the original ones had metal horns.
He was quite an artist, and so that's why a lot of my stuff is made up with brass screws, because he used brass screws, and sometimes he just cut the end off of them, and bull rings and all that. The tail on the horses were actually his horses. He just went out and cut off. If you remember, it was a lot fuller and a lot longer. Now it's amazing.
Yeah, it's
Since
amazing that
1977 that it's
they
still.
held up all these years.
Wow.
And the saddles that came with it are gone, and it had sheepskin or type of a blanket underneath the saddles, and they're gone too. So, oh well, easy. I had to make the bull and the mule here because we didn't have a bull or a mule. And I thought, well, he says, you want them out of oak or walnut? I said, well, the bull's a little bigger. Let's do it on a walnut. And so that's why they're walnut. But he had a big belt sander. I think it was about 3-inch wide. It stood about that high. And that's how he made all the animals' legs. And he certainly knew how a horse looked, or a cow looked, or a mule looked, and quite an amazing artist.
But Dad, when do you think
Sure.
was,
Will Brewer, you can stick the camera in there, he's on the plaque on the back, so I wouldn't forget it. Anyway. But,
What was that, Becky?
I was gonna say, what was the first year that you started, like, what was the first one that you did? How long ago was that? First toy.
2013, I guess.
Okay,
2000, I did that one over there. I haven't done anything for a little while because can't think of anything to go, and I should call you up and ask you. Becky wanted a entrance gate, and like they have them out west, and that's where that come from, and so I put the skull on there. I found it Hobby Horse or something.
I help him set up a lot, so, he's very particular on how he sets these up. I mean, it's like, if I do him wrong, he'll reset it. He'll put it together the way it's supposed to be, so. But I was the one who was doing the fencing. I got to do the fencing. So he's got a lot of it, actually. It can go all the way around
I think there's about
road.
50, 60 feet of fencing.
yeah.
So I can,
And
both
he can,
sides of the road, and
you like to have like 5 tables, right?
yeah, but this is the first time it's just a couple of tables, and we originally sent up just to talk about farming machinery, and now we're over here. I brought these along to see, because somebody might, anything else. It makes the thing, go a little longer, so we can make an hour out of it. Oh, it's an hour, or what is it?
Well over.
Maybe it's more than that now, I guess, huh?
Yeah, it's an hour and a half.
When you ran the Ironman, was the hour this long?
Other questions